One unexpected evening, a subtle but undeniable tension emerged between us in the stillness of his room, altering everything in an instant. It was a calm night when I first noticed a change. The house unusually quiet as I sat alone in the living room, the low hum of the TV breaking the silence. The program barely held my attention, yet I felt too restless to focus on anything else. My younger brother, Ethan, had been out with friends all day, and the solitude was a rare and appreciated break. Just as I was about to turn off the TV and find something more productive to do, I heard the door creak open. As usual, Ethan entered without knocking or announcing his arrival, acting as though he owned the place. But tonight, something was different. His entrance, typically filled with arrogance or humor, was subdued. He didn't act his usual self. There was a quietness to him that caught my attention. "Hey," he greeted softly, his voice barely louder than a whisper. I looked at him, surprised by the calmness in his tone. Usually, Ethan would come in with a joke or a playful remark, but tonight, something seemed to have changed. He stood at the door, his hands in his pockets, his gaze slightly lowered. His stance seemed almost vulnerable. Definitely unusual for him. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I stared at him a bit longer than normal. Ethan, my younger brother, had recently shown signs of a shift in behavior. It wasn't negative, but it was hard to put into words. He moved closer and sat next to me, uncomfortably close, though I didn't pull away right away. Ethan and I had always shared a close bond, swapping everything from childhood memories to personal secrets. But lately, there was an unspoken tension between us. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet and unsure, as if reflecting on our changing relationship. I raised an eyebrow, unsure of his intentions. Ethan had always been the carefree one, quick with a joke and rarely serious about anything. But tonight, as he sat there, his eyes on the floor, he seemed different. More mature, maybe even somber. "Can you clarify what you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my cool, though I felt a shift in the air. He adjusted his posture, his leg brushing mine. For a brief moment, I froze, feeling a strange electrical sensation from the touch. I quickly cleared my throat and moved away, trying to shake off the odd feeling. Ethan muttered, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I don't know. It's like something's crawling up my spine," he said, his tone reflecting deep thought. "I've been thinking about us, about our relationship and how things have changed recently." I looked at him, uncertain if I was following his thoughts. Ethan and I had always been close, so the idea of things being different felt strange. I shifted uncomfortably, trying to figure out where this conversation was headed. "What do you mean by different?" I asked again, my voice a mix of curiosity and unease. He finally lifted his gaze to meet mine, and I saw a level of intensity in his eyes I hadn't noticed before, like he was searching for something deeper within me. His look was almost analytical, as though he was trying to understand me in a way I hadn't experienced. "Do you ever feel like there's a deeper connection between us than just being brothers?" His words hung in the air, thick with implication. My heart skipped a beat, and a wave of panic washed over me. What was he suggesting? I didn't know how to respond. What did he mean by more? I had thought about our bond before, having shared nearly our entire lives, but his words made me consider something I had never allowed myself to think about. It was too complicated. "I don't know what you mean, man," I said, forcing a laugh to cover up the sudden tension building inside me. "We're siblings." But Ethan didn't laugh. Instead, his face grew serious, and he moved closer. So close I could feel the warmth of his body. "Don't lie," he said softly. "I know you can feel the tension between us. I'm not sure what it is, but I can't ignore it anymore." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wanted to push away the uncomfortable feeling, to say he was overthinking it, but I couldn't deny that something had changed. There was an unspoken connection between us, one that I couldn't explain. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I was aware of my shallow breaths, waiting for some sort of clarity. But instead, we were both left in silence, a silence heavier than anything we had ever shared. Ethan finally spoke again, breaking the quiet. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said, "but I think we need to talk about what's changed." I sat there, frozen, unsure of what to say. He was right. Things had changed, and though I didn't want to admit it, I couldn't ignore it. The tension between us was undeniable. Ethan rose, his expression unreadable. Maybe I'm overthinking it, he said, though his words lingered in the air, repeating in my mind like a song on loop. Something had shifted between us, and even though I didn't fully understand it, I knew this was just the beginning. Later that night, as I lay in bed, Ethan's words echoed in my thoughts. I realized I couldn't just ignore this change. It had happened, and though I didn't know where it was leading, I understood that there was no turning back. The next few days were unlike anything I had expected. The dynamic between us was quieter, but not in the peaceful way I was used to. It felt as if there was something unspoken between us, something hanging in the air. I tried to act like everything was normal, keeping my distance and sticking to our usual routine. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't ignore the way Ethan looked at me, his gaze lingering longer than it used to. There was a shift in our relationship, subtle, but clear. It felt like we were walking on a tightrope, where a single misstep could change everything. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, things escalated. I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the growing tension. Ethan had been unusually quiet all day, not joking or teasing me like he usually did. It was as if he was waiting for something, waiting for me to say something. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront it. I stood up, my heart pounding, and walked to his room. I knocked softly on the door, my fingers tapping nervously. There was no answer. I knocked again, this time louder. "Ethan," I called, my voice trembling with the anxiety I felt. The door opened slightly, revealing him standing there. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a depth I couldn't describe. Something primal. "What is it?" he asked, his voice neutral but with an unmistakable undercurrent of significance. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I spoke, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel my heartbeat quickening. He stepped back as I moved past him, motioning for me to enter. As I did, his body brushed against mine, sending a shiver down my spine. We had always shared a close bond, but this felt different. There was an unspoken tension between us. I sat on the edge of his chair, my hands nervously twitching in my lap. Ethan sat beside me, his gaze fixed on mine. When I left my room, it felt more confined than usual, the air thick with the unspoken tension between us. I began, my voice trembling. "About what you said last night, I've been thinking about it." He remained still, watching me intently, waiting for me to continue, and his silence only deepened my anxiety. "I'm not sure how to interpret it," I confessed, my words spilling out quickly. "I don't understand what's happening between us, but I can't stop thinking about it. It's making me anxious." Ethan moved closer, his knee brushing against mine, and that small, accidental touch made my heart race. I wanted to pull away, but I couldn't move, paralyzed by the warmth of his presence. His voice was barely a whisper. "I've been trying to figure it out too, but it's hard to make sense of it. It feels like something has changed, but I don't know how to explain it." The words we had both been avoiding, afraid to say, now hung between us, and with their acknowledgement, there was no turning back. I couldn't think of anything to say. My mind was focused entirely on Ethan's closeness, as though his presence filled the room. We sat in silence, the weight of our unspoken thoughts pressing on us. The tension was suffocating, and I could feel my pulse in my throat, my heart racing out of control. "We don't have to figure it all out right now." Ethan's quiet voice broke the silence. "We can just let it unfold." I turned to face him, our eyes meeting directly. His gaze had darkened, filled with an intensity I had never seen before. It was as if he was waiting for me to say something, to make a move that would break the silence or bring us closer. Every part of me wanted to close that distance, to feel the warmth of his body against mine. But I stayed frozen, caught in a strange limbo where everything felt both wrong and right. As he shifted, his shoulder brushed against mine, and the brief contact made my breath catch. My heart pounded, and I felt my cheeks flush. What was happening to me? Why was this feeling so strong? "I'm not sure where this is heading," I said, my voice wavering as I tried to hold it together. "But I can't ignore it." I can't pretend nothing has changed. Ethan nodded slowly, his face inches from mine, and I could feel the warmth of his breath on my skin. Time seemed to stop, and all I could hear was the frantic beat of my own heart. Neither of us moved, and the silence between us deepened. "Neither can I," he whispered. Then, without warning, he leaned in slightly, his lips brushing against my cheek in a soft, tentative gesture. It wasn't a kiss in the usual sense, but the feeling it stirred in me was enough to send a jolt of electricity through my body, enough to make me dizzy. Before I could react, Ethan pulled away, his face filled with shame. He looked down at his hands, avoiding eye contact. "I'm sorry," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to make things uncomfortable." But the damage had already been done. The moment had passed, leaving a strange, lingering sensation in my chest, and I didn't know how to respond or move forward. The tension between us was palpable, poised to explode at any second. "I think I need some space," I said more abruptly than I intended. I stood quickly, desperate to leave the room. Ethan didn't try to stop me. He just nodded, a mixture of surprise and regret on his face. "I understand." I left, my mind swirling with confusion. I had never felt so lost and out of control. What was happening between us? I didn't know, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face it. But I did know one thing. Our relationship had changed, and there was no going back. The next day, I didn't see Ethan again until the evening. The entire day passed in a blur. I couldn't concentrate on anything because my mind kept returning to that moment in his room. The kiss that wasn't really a kiss. Every time I tried to focus, the memory of his lips on my skin resurfaced. The air between us felt thicker, like an unspoken challenge waiting to be addressed. As the sun began to set, I wandered aimlessly around the house, trying to avoid the inevitable conversation. But I knew it had to happen. I was in the kitchen when I heard his voice behind me. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed. There was a vulnerability in his gaze that made my chest tighten. He wasn't his usual self anymore. I couldn't tell if it was just my imagination, but it felt as though we were both on the edge of something we weren't ready to confront. "Yeah," I replied, though I wasn't sure myself. I turned to face him, and the moment felt incredibly charged. It was as if everything in the world had converged on this one point between us. There was no going back now. Ethan stepped into the room, his eyes still locked on mine. "I've been thinking about us," he said. My heart sank, knowing where this conversation was headed, but I wasn't sure if I was ready. I nodded, trying to keep my composure even though my pulse was racing. "I know," I whispered, barely able to breathe. He stayed still, his eyes studying me as if weighing his next words. His jaw was tight, and his shoulders were stiff. He seemed to be battling with himself. Then, without warning, he took a step closer to me. Before I could react, his hand brushed lightly against my arm. The contact was gentle, but it sent shivers through my body. "I don't know how to explain this," he said softly, almost reluctantly. "But it feels like something is changing between us, and I can't stop thinking about it." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to pull away, but the feeling of his touch held me in place. It was like he had me trapped in this moment, and I couldn't escape. I finally found my voice, whispering, "I've been feeling it too." His gaze dropped to my lips, and for a moment I thought I might be imagining it. But there was no mistaking it. Ethan was looking at me like he wanted something more. The air between us thickened, changing our perception of each other. My breath hitched as he leaned in closer, his face only inches from mine. "I can't pretend this doesn't matter," he whispered, his voice barely audible. He hesitated, giving me a chance to pull away, but I stayed rooted in place, unable to move. My heart was pounding in my chest, and every part of me knew this moment was about to change everything. Before I could make sense of my feelings, Ethan closed the gap. His lips brushed against mine in a slow, tentative kiss. At first, it was light, almost like a whisper of contact, but it was enough to send my world spinning. I didn't pull away. Instead, I kissed him back. I instinctively kissed him back, just as slowly and unsurely. The world around us seemed to fade, and all my focus shifted to the warmth of his lips pressing against mine, the rapid pulse in my ears. For a fleeting moment, everything else vanished, leaving just the two of us in the kitchen, entwined. The kiss felt both forbidden and inevitable, and when we broke apart, I was left speechless. I remained still, my mind racing to understand everything that had just happened. Ethan stared at me, his breathing shallow, his chest rising and falling quickly. He seemed just as stunned. "I wasn't sure if you wanted this," he admitted, his voice slightly trembling. "But I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know if you felt the same." I swallowed hard, trying to calm my breathing. My mind was filled with questions, but one thing was clear. "Yes, I felt it too," I answered softly, finding the courage to speak. Ethan's gaze softened as he moved closer, placing his hands on my waist. "I don't want to complicate things between us," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. "But I can't ignore this anymore." I quickly dismissed his words, replying hastily, "I won't pretend it didn't happen." The tension between us was palpable, and I felt my body reacting to him even though my mind was still confused. My hands instinctively rose to touch his face, tracing the lines of his jaw, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingertips. Ethan leaned in, his gaze fixed on mine with purpose, and our lips met again. The kiss deepened with each passing second, overwhelming me with its intensity. As our bodies swayed together, his hands gripped my hips, pulling me closer, and I could feel our heartbeats sinking. I let go of my reservations, allowing his lips to express the emotions we could not put into words. When we finally broke apart, we were both out of breath, our chests heaving. I avoided looking at him, unsure of what I might see in his eyes. But Ethan gently cupped my face, lifting my chin to meet his gaze. "Are you sure?" he asked, his tone a mix of hope and doubt. "Once we move forward, there's no turning back." I stared at him for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in my chest. Could I really do this? Could we truly move ahead? But as I looked into his eyes, all my doubts faded. There was a certainty in them that had always been there. "Yes," I whispered. And once again, our lips met, this time with all the intensity that had been building between us. The kiss marked the beginning of something new, something neither of us fully understood, but we both recognized its permanence. From that moment onward, every glance at Ethan revealed a new layer to our relationship, one that felt difficult to navigate. What had once been a simple, brotherly touch now held a spark, and every look was loaded with unspoken questions. What did this mean for us now? What was I supposed to do with these overwhelming emotions that lingered between us, impossible to ignore? That night, after everything that had unfolded, I couldn't sleep. The room felt too small for the thoughts racing through my mind. I found myself reliving our kisses over and over again, images of our closeness flashing through my head. I had never experienced such turmoil before, yet a part of me longed for more. Ethan remained quiet, and the next morning we both avoided each other, unable to find the right words to bridge the gap between where we were and where we had been. It was clear that something had shifted between us, and there was no going back. But neither of us knew what to do next. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock at my door. I was more surprised than anything to find that he was the one standing outside. I paused for a moment before rising and opening the door. Ethan stood there, his face a mixture of anxiety and determination. "I can't stop thinking about this," he said, his voice low but filled with passion. "I can't just walk away." I stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The tension between us was thick, now unavoidable. He walked into the room and I shut the door behind him, the stillness in the air almost suffocating as we faced each other for the first time since everything had changed. I struggled to find the right words. I was nervous when he finally spoke, briefly looking away, afraid of what his words might mean, or how they might be perceived. "I don't care anymore," he confessed. "I don't care what others think. I can't hide this anymore. I want you, and I believe you want me too." His words hit me harder than I expected. I knew I wanted him too. There was no denying that. The connection between us was undeniable, a pull neither of us could escape. "I do," I whispered softly, stepping closer. "But I'm also scared." Ethan nodded in understanding. stepping closer to me. His hands reached out tentatively at first, but then with more certainty, he cupped my face gently in his palms. His touch was soft, yet his gaze showed an urgency, as though he was holding something precious. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. There would be no more pretending. I had stopped deceiving myself about my desires. What I truly wanted was him. I whispered quietly, confirming what I knew to be true. Ethan leaned in, and this kiss was different. It was neither hesitant nor uncertain. It was filled with urgency, carrying the longing and passion that had been building between us for so long. Our lips met with such force that I lost my breath, my hands reaching out to pull him closer, craving him more than I had ever craved anything. His hand moved to my waist, drawing me nearer, and I felt the heat of his body against mine, the pressure of his chest on mine, and the way my body responded to his touch. I needed more. I wanted more, and I couldn't stop myself. The kiss deepened as he guided me toward my bed, and we both fell onto the mattress, tangled up with each other. His hands roamed over my body with a tenderness I hadn't expected, each touch sending a shiver down my spine. But as our bodies pressed closer, a brief moment of hesitation rose within me. I pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes, searching for reassurance, for confirmation that this was okay. Ethan, seeming to sense my uncertainty, gently brushed a strand of hair from my face and gave me a soft smile. "I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "Neither are you. We'll face whatever comes together." That was all I needed to hear. With those words, I leaned in again, and this time, there were no doubts. We were both fully committed, shedding all the worries that had held us back, surrendering to the moment. The outside world became irrelevant, and it was just the two of us. The bond we had built now evolving into something deeper and more profound. As the night went on, we discovered each other's rhythms and desires in a way that felt both new and familiar. There was a vulnerability in our exploration, a rawness that left us breathless, trapped in emotions we had never felt before. Time seemed to slip away, yet we held on, each touch and kiss pulling us further into an intoxicating world we didn't want to leave. When the first light of dawn began to filter through the window, we slowed down, both of us exhausted, but still longing for more. I lay next to him, our bodies intertwined, and our hearts gradually returning to a steady rhythm. We were silent for a long time, but the stillness felt different this time. There was no discomfort, no confusion. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a deep sense of belonging. "I'm not sure what will happen next," I said softly, breaking the silence. "But I know I don't want to lose you." Ethan turned toward me, his expression gentle. "You won't. We're in this together, no matter what." As time went on, things didn't unfold the way I had expected. There was no perfect solution, no clear direction, but for the first time, it didn't seem important. We faced everything together, and that was enough for me. No matter what came next, I was confident we would handle it as a team. We didn't have all the answers, and we weren't sure what the future held, but we both knew that what we had was worth fighting for. In the days that followed, we worked to find a new balance, learning how to exist together without second-guessing every look or touch. It wasn't easy, and sometimes doubt crept into my mind, making me wonder if we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But every time I looked at Ethan, a sense of certainty washed over me, confirming that we had made the right choice. There were moments when we nearly revealed the strain between our public lives and our private relationship, especially in front of family or friends. Those moments felt both exciting and strange, like we were walking a fine line. But they also brought us closer, creating a bond that felt like a secret just for the two of us, something no one else could understand. At night, when the house was quiet, we would seek each other out in the solitude of our rooms, speaking softly, sharing laughter, and expressing the things we couldn't say during the day. Those nights became our refuge, a place where we could truly be ourselves without worrying about anyone else. Sometimes Ethan would talk about the future, his voice filled with both hope and a hint of nervousness. "I don't know where this is going," he would say, his hand finding mine. "But I want you by my side no matter what happens." Hearing him say that brought me a sense of comfort that I couldn't put into words. I didn't have all the answers either, and I didn't know what the future held. But with Ethan, I knew I wouldn't have to face it alone. And that was enough. Slowly, we began to build a peaceful, shared life, filled with simple moments, gestures that held deeper meaning, and glances that spoke volumes. The uncertainties still lingered, but they became less daunting. We knew challenges and obstacles would come, but we were ready to face them, our bond stronger than any hardship. Together, we felt unstoppable, prepared for whatever lay ahead. In the end, it wasn't about where we had come from or where we were going. It was about the present, and I was grateful for the story we were creating together every day.